as a preamble, I'm here with Yves Hanoulle, who is a prolific contributor to the Agile community and the originator of pair coaching. In 2011, Yves started his popular Who Is series, a weekly interview with an Agile practitioner. Yves has recently turned this into a Leanpub book entitled Who Is Agile, which is written in English and which is being translated into German, Spanish, French, Russian, and Catalan. We're going to talk today about Yves' experiences as a writer using the lean publishing approach on Leanpub, and we'll also talk about ways we can improve Leanpub for him at the end of the podcast, since Leanpub is a lean startup and we're doing the customer development process. So Yves, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
So first of all, I want to ask you, how did you find out about Leanpub and what made you want to try it?
So I found out about the book from Laurent Bossavit.
Right.
I can't come up with the name. It's an English word that I'm not sure how it's pronounced, so I will not even try. But he wrote an interesting book about ideas that are generally accepted, but are actually wrong, or there is no scientific evidence for that.
Right.
And he did that on Leanpub. Now, I was immediately attracted to the idea because about a year ago or 2 years ago, I had an idea to try to write a book with lots of people about Agile games.
Right.
That completely didn't work out for multiple reasons. But one of the things I was trying to do there was writing it, at the same time creating a community, and next to that doing all the technical stuff for writing the book, which was impossible to do all of that together. And when I found Leanpub, that was exactly what I needed. That was a company doing all the technical parts for doing such a book, which I believe is the right way to publish a book, in the sense that you publish it and then you find errors, so you change something and you write a new one. I've been bugging and asking Agile authors for at least 3 or 4 years about why don't they write their books in an Agile way. And lots of large Agile writers told me it's not possible. And you guys are proving it is.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Well, thank you. That's basically, you've summarized why we're making Leanpub. So, yeah, actually, okay, so continuing along that train of thought, so, so do you think that when you started the Who Is Agile book, did you have actually let's talk about the previous book you tried. So before you used Leanpub with the other book, like you were gonna build a system, like you were gonna build a community, try to create a community around the book as you wrote it. So with Leanpub, one of the things we've been thinking about is, should we try to do more to facilitate community, or whether what we're doing is enough and authors get the community parts they need with their blog and Twitter. So do you have any?
I have not really been thinking about that. Let first answer the first part about what I do with the book on the Agile games is
right.
That I think a lot of things were confusing at the time. There was not really a real goal, or we didn't have a common vision there. So, which is always something that is needed to create together, to create something together. So that was part of the big problem that we had. So that's one big reason why it didn't work. There were others as well, but that's a really big thing. So for Who Is, Who Is Agile started totally different, in the sense that I had already these blog posts on my website, which were actually the questions I created in 5 or 6 minutes. The first, when I had the idea, I put that together, and in just a few minutes, I had a set of questions that I liked, and that apparently a lot of people liked. So I blogged about it, and very quickly I got very emotional response from people really loving it. So, and by republishing every week something new, I had very quickly, some people who were really in favor of what I'd done there. So there was almost instantly a kind of community around it. So, and that helped, of course, for if I wanted to publish something, to go for and have a community. But in the beginning, when I started with the book, it was just me writing or converting the blog into a book post.
Right.
But for people that know me in the community, know that almost everything I do, I try to turn into a community, whether I want it or not. It just happens.
Right.
So at one point, people were I'm not. English is not my first language, so I make a lot of mistakes in English and actually in my first language as well.
You speak your second language or third better than many people speak either second or third languages, or even some people speak their first.
But speaking is probably rather okay, but writing I'm rather terrible. So a lot of people started sending me, or a few people started sending me updates and saying, well, there's something wrong there, or there's something wrong there. And I just, in a real agile way, I just gave them full permission on Dropbox and others, so they could fix the errors that I was making. And so very quickly I had 2-3 people that were helping me out.
Right.
With the layout, something about the pictures. I had a question about pictures the right size, and I asked the question to someone that had also a Leanpub book, and he helped me out. And then somebody else came with another idea of maps and something like that. And then I realized that when I was in France last year, when I lived there in France, that most people in France, they actually like to read in French and not in English.
Right.
So I started chatting with someone that I know has been translating a lot of English books just for pleasure on his blog, or at least creating kind of cliff notes from these books. And he was interested in that idea, and from that I started asking people if they wanted to translate. So that comes back to, do we need more community support? Well, what we do see is I can add all the Twitter accounts for all the contributors to the book, to the editors and stuff like that, which is really nice. What probably would be nice if, as an extra feature, is if that we could see who's tweeting about the book and some other stuff. I'm not sure if it's interesting for the community, but I know as authors and already a few people have asked this on the mailing list, and you guys have already responded to that, is the fact that we could see how many people download something in PDF or in Kindle.
Yeah, we have to do the analytics better in terms of formats.
Exactly. So, but I know that you guys are working on that, so that's an idea that you have. One thing that I know that Amazon is doing lately, which I like, is that there is an option in Amazon. I'm not sure how it works, but there is an option that if in a Kindle I tweet something to a tag that's called author, automatically or it's emailed, or there is somehow the author gets a notification about that. So that could be a nice thing to create community or link for readers to do.
Yeah,
with that.
One thing we were thinking of doing is having like hashtags for every book, and putting that into the PDFs, so that, like, I've seen one book, a book on customer development actually had done that really well. Not a Leanpub book, a different book had done it really well, where they had sort of in the book built in sort of, hey, tweet this, and it had a hashtag, and if every book had a hashtag, you could have sort of that would be an incentive for, like, that would be an easy way for it to materialize on Twitter. But yeah, no, I think that would help a lot. Okay, so let's see. In terms of Who is Agile, so what are your goals for the Who is Agile book? Like, I know you've been making a lot of progress on it. Do you think you're roughly mostly done, or halfway, or what's your sort of vision for it as?
Actually, in my vision when I started, I'm almost there, in the sense that this week I will publish 50 people or contributors, or 51 or something like that. But my vision has shifted. Of course, we're agile.
Right.
Well, somebody Marcin created a map of where the people are living in the book. And what I saw there is something I knew more or less, but I didn't know how bad it was, is that most authors were actually from Europe and from the US. And I thought, okay, this is mostly what it is. But when I saw the map, I really realized how little other countries we had. So what I've been doing the last weeks is I've been inviting a lot of people that were actually already in my backlog, but I've been pushing them up front in my backlog, so that they would actually reply now, and so that I can have answers for, well, maybe not all countries in the world, but for a lot more countries than we have right now. Which would mean that instead of publishing the first book with just 52, so I came up with the idea of 52 because that's 1 year of publishing, right?
Right.
So that was my idea. And then I have already about 200 people in my backlog, but then I said, okay, then I create just a second book with the next and the next. But still, I don't like to have a book with mainly people just from Europe and from the US. So I've been publishing a lot of people from different countries. It means that, basically I'm kind of ignoring the current people I already have. For example, from Belgium, the country I'm living in, I still miss 2 or 3 important people for the Belgium Agile community, but I'm ignoring them for this book because I think we already have 2 or 3 Belgian people, so I think that's more than enough. So I really try to have more people from different communities, because one of my goals for the book was to get to know people that I didn't know.
Right.
So it's not a book that is a who is who of who are the people I regularly work with or something like that. It's really a way to know, to get to know much more different people. And that's, in that sense, it has been a terrific year because of lots of people that I know from names, but I've never worked with, or I didn't even have email address that are now in the book.
Right, no, that makes sense. Actually, I have a question about that. So in terms of the book, like traditionally, like lots of what we found on Leanpub is the notion of when a book is done or not is sort of a hard thing to figure out. Like, for example, when you have a physical book, you can't make it beyond, like, say, 600-700 pages without it being really annoying to read because it's too heavy. But we've had Leanpub books that go over 1,000 pages. And it's an interesting question about how long should a book be? Like, should you split? Like, if you have a topic such as this, should you make one large book, or should you make like yearly books, or should you? Have you thought? Like, I'm curious for your thoughts on that. Like, what do you think the right thing to do?
Yeah. So my like I said, my original idea was I would just cap it off at 52, which it was an arbitrary number, but I can explain it.
Yeah, once a week.
Yeah, exactly. But now it's harder. So and it's very tempting to, I still have. So I think I have about 80 people that I now want to have in the book. Right. But then today I received another answer for someone, and he proposes someone who's in yet another country, and I'm tempting like, maybe 81, and so then it makes it a lot harder. I have already right now about 200 printed A4 pages.
Right.
I have no idea what that would be in small Kindle pages, but a lot.
Right. Pages don't make any sense on Kindle.
Exactly. It's then numbers or whatever points or whatever they call it. But still, it's a lot. So if I know that I have only 50, and with 80, we'll probably end up with 300 or 400 A4 pages, which is a rather heavy book.
Right.
But so that's really, I have been doubting, do I really want that? But for me, it was important to have a lot of diverse people in it. So I will stick to that. But after that, I definitely want to stop. So that's why I think 80 will be the maximum, and just create a second book.
Right. Actually, just for random suggestion, one thing we found, for example, back when Eric Ries, like we have Eric Ries' Startup Lessons Learned on Leanpub, and what he did, we had his whole blog there, but what he did is he subset it out like a year of his blog and then another year to make print books so that you wouldn't have to print the whole thing. And so we like at one point on Leanpub, we were selling 3 versions of his book. We were selling like the entire thing, like which was called All Seasons, and then we were selling a season 1 and a season 2. Like, so the idea of like books are this book. A book is kind of like a collection of content, and you can like slice and dice it in a few different ways and have those all being offered. So like you could, for example, have, because like with the ebook, it's weird. Like if you think about, let's say you have like 90 people in your book or 80 or whatever, and say that the comfortable amount to have in your hand when you're reading a printed book is like say 40 or 50, then from a print perspective, it's interesting to consider, you know, making like 2 books, but then the ebook is almost nicer to have it be 1, so you can just search, like for searchability, like and also for just completeness in terms of people not understanding, well, which one are they in? So it's an interesting question. It's
Well, with as long as it's sold on Leanpub, yes, it's easy to keep it in just one book. But one of the ideas is to also publish it on Amazon, because I know that if I look at the books I'm buying for my Kindle, and this is something I've been blogged about earlier on, where do I buy books on my Kindle? I buy books on my Kindle when I'm somewhere on the road, in a train, on a plane, or in an airport or somewhere where I don't have access to a computer. And so I go online using my Kindle and I directly buy a book.
Mm-hmm.
That's just not possible well, it's only possible with Amazon. Unfortunately, well, with Apple as well, if you're on an iPad, but that's just not possible for Leanpub to sell Leanpub books there.
right.
So unfortunately, I need to cap it off at some point. And another thing, of course, is that for all the contributors in there, and I think also the people who helped with the book, it would be nice to have a physical version of the book. And for that, you have to cap it up as well at one point.
Yeah.
So there will be a point where I will say, this book is done. We'll finish it up and make sure that we remove all the problems that we currently haven't solved yet, and then just go for a second book.
That makes sense. Okay, let's talk about pricing for a minute.
I wanted to add one thing, because I was curious. You didn't mention one. You guys have an extra service that actually does grouping of books, right? You have next to Leanpub, you have another, I don't know, service or website.
Yeah, this was the thing that we made a thing called Lean Bundle. It was one of those. We have a little thing inside our company where if someone has an idea and they're willing to say this is doable in 24 hours, like not one, like we're not in our 20s. Well, some of us are. Some of us are in our 30s. We've been married with kids, and 24 hours doesn't mean one day anymore. But if something if you can build a minimum viable product in 24 hours, obviously supporting it means that it's a lot longer. But it's worth considering doing something as an experiment. So Lean Bundle is an experiment that we've created, primarily actually during customer development. One of our authors he wanted to sell a bundle of his book with another book about Node.js. And the other book wasn't a Leanpub book. And so for us, it was like, well, Leanpub has to sell Leanpub books because readers expect all 3 formats. Right? And so we can't just sell some arbitrary PDF that someone has. And so we thought, well, and the idea of selling bundles is interesting. So that's why we created Lean Bundle. So we're not really emphasizing it right now because it's sort of an experiment, and some people find it and use it, but really it's at this point it's an experimental product.
Okay, but it's interesting to mention. Well, it's good that you mention it, that it's not limited to Leanpub books, because I thought it was.
Yeah, exactly. It's actually arbitrary digital content. Like anything, I could sell coupons for a sushi restaurant on Lean Bundle. Like it's like the sort of, if you visualize like what would Leanpub be? What if Leanpub went and made Groupon? What would we do? Right? And that was our sort of Lean Bundle idea. But the thing is that we're a bootstrap startup, right? So we only have a certain amount of time of the day, and there are things, for example, like fixing Dropbox syncing issues and other things that we have to do. We have to make sure, like Leanpub is the thing that we're betting on, and we really like, and we think that Lean Bundle is an interesting sort of it's an interesting thing, um, but it's more interesting from a question for questions around like things like business models and experimenting with selling just arbitrary digital goods. But that's a space that has everything from like Gumroad where you just sell an arbitrary link to it doesn't we don't really offer anything unique there. I mean the idea of except for the idea of creating a bundle with other people that you wouldn't like give them your credit card number. And
Right.
that's the interesting idea of if you and I wanted to make a bundle of our books, we could do that, and Lean Bundle would split the money and all that, and so we'd be like it's sort of a combination of a Groupon plus like it's an experiment. I wish I had infinite time, we could put a lot and infinite money, we could put a lot of effort into it and see what happened. But right now it's a sort of a little experiment on the side. Um,
But
yeah, go ahead.
what I wanted to say is that I really like that because it offers the possibility to, for example, we translate books, or the Who is Agile will be translated, like you say, in a few languages.
Right.
There's actually more people are signing up, but it's they're not busy yet, so we've not made any publicity. But I would want to have an offer to say people, well, you can actually buy the French and the English books together.
Mm.
And things like that. So it's nice to have a way to deal with that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
it shows in multiple ways that you're agile and okay, we stick to our goals for Leanpub. We only sell the 3 versions, which I really like, that every book and I saw multiple questions on the mailing list, people saying, oh, I want only to sell PDF or only Kindle, and you've been really kind of hard, but fair, I think, saying, well, sorry, then you have to go somewhere else because that's not what we're doing, which is a good focus. But at the same time, you found a way around that you can say, well, if you want to sell it together with something else, that's how you can deal with it. So I like that.
Yeah, we're trying to. We believe in the lean startup and agile ideas very deeply. Um, it's a really interesting question, right? Like especially because there's 2 types of books in the world. There's finished books and there's in progress books, right? And there's all kinds of ways to sell finished books. And lots of people are in a situation of I have a Word document, it's done. Make this a book, please. And I mean, there's services like BookBaby and other competitors that do that, and they charge $50 or $60, and I think they probably do a fine job. And so we're like, well, you know what? That's not really. We don't add anything unique there, and converting a book. If you want to take a Word document and make a PDF, going through Markdown is probably not the most intuitive thing in the world to do. Now, if you want to iterate, and if you want to iterate on a book, then all of a sudden we add value, and then so that's we try to focus on the things we're good at and ignore everything else because we don't have time to focus on things we're not good at.
Right, exactly, and that's a typical lean startup mentality, which I think you guys are indeed very good at. I've been throwing lots of ideas at you and at everybody at Leanpub, I think, and I can see that really that, well, if it's an idea that has some merit and it can be quickly solved and help a lot of things, you will quickly do it. But if it's an idea that might be interesting, but it's not really in your core values or not on your roadblock right now, you will just as well say, well, nice, but we're not going to do that, which is what you need to do. You need to focus, you need to prioritize, and I think you guys are really good at that.
Well,
So thank you.
The weird thing is there's this scary middle area that I found, and I'm curious actually to see how you deal with this, where we have the ideas that we know are outside of our core, what Leanpub is, and we can just say no to those. And then we have the things which are like, this is on fire, it's hurting an author, fix this today. And then everything in between, there's lots of good ideas that go into our backlog. And the problem is we use Pivotal Tracker and it works fine for us. But our backlog is just growing and growing, and just trying to prioritize a backlog, like, I mean,
It's a full-time job.
it's hard. It's really hard, especially when you have like only a few people and this is, we're bootstrapped, right? So we have to be pretty ruthless, but even still, there's lots of things that are in our backlog. For example, when we were talking earlier in our conversation right now, when you're saying about, well, you'd like to sell the multiple language versions together, and you're talking about Lean Bundle, I mean, to me, if there's a bunch of Leanpub books that want to get sold together that are translations of the same thing, that should be something that's. I mean, it's one of those. I just felt a little tug, right? Like, oh, there's a feature hiding there, which is like, should we support buying all the translations of a book, or buying, or should we support arbitrary bundles of, like, I just, like, for example, when you suggested, hey, I'd like to be able to buy other people's books with my royalties, it's like, that's a fantastic idea, and I want to do that. And there's the nice thing about that one is there's a business justification, which is easy, which is like, hey, we don't take a PayPal cut twice, right? So, that'll get done. The question about Lean Bundle is, like, if you have a Lean Bundle, if you have 3 Leanpub books that are being sold together and they're all by the same person, you shouldn't have to use Lean Bundle for that. But
I don't know.
I know it's weird. It's tough.
Well, I have a few answers because you asked multiple questions there. So you asked how do you deal with that? But I will reply to that afterwards. The first thing you said right now about Lean Bundle and should we make it easier? One of the things I've already answered at the Leanpub mailing list, which is a great support, by the way. But one of the things I've answered is if there is a way that I, as an author, can do it myself, then I don't think it's your top priority, because you do have things that I'm still not able to do myself, and then it's really good. Of course, you should at some point do some of these things, like offering ways for people to buy them together. That might be interesting for the translations, but it's not, for me, it's not a top priority. I haven't also started doing this. Well, we haven't started selling translations yet, so it's not on my plate yet, but it might be for some other people. But again, we thanks to Lean Bundle, we can deal with that.
Yeah. Or just coupon codes. You can just have coupon codes in Leanpub too.
Yeah. So that there is ways to deal with that, and then that's fine. But there are options that are not possible, and like with Lean Startup, you have to focus on some stuff. Now, you asked for how do you deal with that? Well, I have a very nice example. I had a request so I'm really busy with way too many projects, like a lot of people. And this one is one that's taking a lot of my time. But I had a really interesting question from another Leanpub author who asked me to write a particular part in his book, which I'm really interested in because it's something I've been talking about for years, and actually wrote a few articles about the core protocols. But I really don't see how I could start writing it right now because I'm so busy with the Who Is Agile book. But then I realized that I just reviewed a book of a friend of mine about the core protocols in the last year. And my idea was to originally write that text and ask her to review, but I just sent her an email today and asked, hey, Vicky, would you be interested in to write most part of it, and then we can again work together on it, but you write the main part. And she said yes. So I delegate all the things where that are in the middle.
Right.
And this is partially how I create communities, in a sense that I ask a lot for help to people, and for example, I know that so you know that I'm working also on a Lean startup that is working on showing statistics for
right.
for book sales, and so I think this is where. I know that you guys really want to make much nicer statistics for all the book sales and on all these things, but we have a service that we think, well, we can actually, at least in the first time, we can kind of work together until the moment that you have time to work more on statistics, and we could show some of that stuff. So you could delegate, and this is just an example, but I'm sure that some of the other stuff could be delegated, like Lean Bundle. It's kind of delegated in a way that you said, well, people can do that in a 24-hour. They can, as in a FedEx day, they can just do something like that. Well, it was kind of delegated to such a moment. So for me, there's multiple ways of delegation. The book is, I have like, yeah, I think we have now 14 people working on one way or another on the book. That's just crazy. That's just me asking for help, and then other people that are really glad that they can help out.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
So that's great.
Is the Dropbox experience working well? I know that we've had our hiccups in like the past few days with publishing, but other than that, in terms of collaboration, does the Dropbox approach work well for you, or do you need more?
I'm a really fan of Dropbox. I've been using it for about half a year for multiple things. So my Dropbox account is really full. I'm at levels, very high levels, because I use it. Yeah, I'm doing trainings with other Agile coaches basically around the world. So that's one way we deal with large slideshows and other stuff. So I'm using that a lot. With now 14 people editing, we have lost already some content. But we can find it back, so that's not a problem, because thanks to Dropbox you can find the history back. But the problem there is then you have some kind of merging problems, and of course JIT or SVN or something would be better, because you have tools in that are there for merging.
Yeah.
Which is not possible with Dropbox, which is a shame because it's text, so technically it could be merged.
Yeah, no, I understand.
But okay, we're dealing with that by making sure that we communicate a little more. I'm not sure how it will work with the translations. We have a spreadsheet where people are saying, I'm working on that file. So I think with translations it's probably less a problem. On the other side, the new files I'm adding to the book, I receive them. I add a little introduction about the person, and I add a lot of links to it. And at the same time, other people are reviewing the text and removing so spelling mistakes and other mistakes. And that's why we had some hiccups. But we kind of, I think that we didn't lose anything yet in the last 2 weeks. I think it's because we streamlined our communication better. So we work around it, and I think it works for us. Where Git or something would be more interesting is that we can fork translations. Because now, one thing that makes it harder is that if I start with a new translation, we have to copy the files over. And at that level, we kind of lose if people are still changing it. That's not a problem right now, because there's, like I said, we have 50 people who are in the English book, and they all need to be translated. And by the time they're at 50, we'll probably have already added 10 or 20 more. So we'll probably finish the English books before they're halfway into the translations. So I don't think we'll have lots of problems there, but there might be a risk that when we change something in some of the earlier files, that it's kind of hard to see for the translators. And moreover, the part where I see most of the problems is we have a file that's called library. So we have, I think, about 200, no, I'm not sure, I don't know. I think about 100 books or 200 books in it that are sorted alphabetically. So every time I add a new contributor's answers, I add all the books that he's talking about in his file, in his answers, and I add them alphabetically in the library. So if the people that are doing the translations have already translated part of the library, that is a problem.
I think there might be. Let me just. So this is. I have an idea that might work. So it's, as an aside, we actually used to use Git and GitHub before we switched to Dropbox. Back in the day, Leanpub was the thing where you could either use GitHub and Git, or you could use in the website WordPress, like editing your book in the browser. And the conclusion we came to was that Git was too elitist, and that the website one was just terrible because like writing a book, you shouldn't write a book in a web browser, and Git was put us out of the reach of almost everyone. But we really like Git, and we use it internally. Like whenever you click publish now, we make we had to reset this when we just did our recent refactoring, but now whenever you click publish or preview, we make a new Git commit of everything. But the interesting thing is we ignore Git repository, like .git directories. And so what that means is you can use Git yourself with the Leanpub book, and it will have no effect on our use of Git with the Leanpub book. And so what you could do is you could have one Git repository for your book and all the translations as forks. And you could use GitHub to share as well. And then the convention would be that you just have Dropbox. You just check it out in multiple places, each into a different Dropbox folder for the translation. And the translation would just be on the branch, but that's just the equivalent of you having. I mean, it's a bit ironic that you'd have, like, for example, if you have all the translations, like, let's say there's 5 translations on your computer, then you'd have 6 copies of the same Git repository on your computer. Well, whatever. They're all just on different branches, but you still build. I think there's a workflow you could use where you could have all the benefits of Git, and we because our goal at Leanpub with Git at a high level is. We think Git is like the best way by far for distributed version control, and we should not ever get in the way of authors using Git and GitHub. And so, without requiring authors to use Git and GitHub. And so, I think you could actually set it up the way you want with all the branches, with branches for different translations, all with one repository, and have Git for diffing and merging and whatnot. And it would, I think it would work just fine. I think that it would take some work, obviously, to pull it all back together. You'd have to be, what you want to do basically is have everyone pause and then just have one person, presumably you, do all the groundwork. But I think it is possible. And if it's not possible for some reason, let me know, because like if something Leanpub does stops you from doing that, let me know, because it shouldn't be the case. Because for us, my goal is for Leanpub to be usable by people like us who can use Git just fine, or by people like my dad who, is like, I have to show him Dropbox for the first time, let alone Git, right? So,
the advantage of Dropbox is exactly that, is that we have some people helping out that are actually not used to Leanpub to Git, so they would definitely be a lot harder. I actually worked with a few authors that have problems with Dropbox, because I shared the Dropbox with all the contributors. So everybody who wrote it. So there's like 40 people in right now in the Dropbox, because some of them did accept, others didn't. But some of these people, and then I'm talking more about some of the Agile coaches who never wrote software themselves, already had problems with Dropbox. So I agree there that going to GitHub.
Yeah, it's hard. I wish if everybody used Git, life would be fantastic, right? I mean, when I was working on an autobiography, I'm like, it's like, and I was trying to explain what distributed version control was, and I was explaining, well, if you write something 6 months ago and then delete it and change it, how can you compare these things if they're in Microsoft Word? And just the idea that this is something that you should be easily able to do and get really angry if you can't do it is like, okay, yeah. Once you get that idea, then it's like, okay, then now you understand, But, okay, well, no, this is... Oh, actually, I have a question, like, back to Leanpub. So one thing I found really interesting about Who is Agile is the pricing that you did, because like your spread of so your minimum price is 99 cents and your suggested price is $29.99, and that's probably like the largest spread other than free and a big price that I think we've seen. So what have you found with that, and what's led to that thinking? And I'm curious because I think you might have something here.
Okay, I really believe in having people setting their own price. So I started out with actually 0 and $29.99.
Right.
But then I think it was Johanna Rodman who said to me, like, if you're crazy, you should not sell anything that you spend so much time in it just for 0. they should at least give some money. So I wasn't really convinced yet, but I said, when people that smart like Joanna tell me that I'm wrong, I'm listening. So even if I didn't grab the idea, I said, okay, let's just change it to €0.99. My idea with the proposed price was that I had the idea that the proposed price would be the maximum that people would pay. And that's exactly what happened. Of course, it's a little bit biased because it's that high. But I said, let's see what happens. And I get prices a little bit all over the place. I had, in the beginning when it was zero, a lot of people zero. But of course, I also had all these authors who contributed, and that at least some of them bought it, and they spent probably more time on it than I did, or at least some of them spend a lot of time in creating these answers. So I thought they could download it for free. Right. So that was happy for me, or fine for me. But I thought also that I have no idea how much money to sell this on. So I let people set their own price, and that was interesting to see what people would actually pay for it. And in that sense, I have an idea of multiple people paying multiple things, and I'm convinced that if I would have set it to €8, for example, right, I would probably have more sales but less money. And now I let people decide, and there are a lot of people. Well, there are people who are actually paying €0.99. There are, I think, about 25% pays that maximum price, or that proposed price. Right. So that's interesting to see that. Yeah, it was, for me, it was a kind of play. Let's see what people will do with it. I never intend to get rich of this book. Because I know that there's not many people who can live off these books. So my idea was just if I can make some money out of it, it's nice. If I can, yeah.
Right, that makes sense. It's interesting. We found with some books that have a smaller spread, like say $3 and $8 or $3 and $4 and $10, we've seen some people pay actually more than the suggested price, and we've also seen people round up, where for example, if it's a $10 book and that makes the author earn $8.50 with the royalty, we've seen people grab the royalty slider and drag that up to $10, and so people will buy the book for $11.60 or something. But yeah, I think, and with free, I think you're right that obviously free is slightly easier to buy than not free, because you have to use PayPal for not free, and since we're in Canada, using alternate payment, we'd love to use for example Stripe or Google Checkout or Amazon Checkout, but these are more of a pain for non-American startups than American startups. But we found that when you enable free, you get a lot more purchases, but then a lot of them are just free, and I'm not sure. I don't know what the answer is. I'm not sure whether I think free is an interesting thing for some books that are mass market, but that once you have a minimum price, then the spread you get goes a lot more toward the suggested than with free. Yeah. Anyway, so this has been really useful, interesting for me. Anyway, I'm not sure for listeners. But do you have? Actually, one last question, which is. Actually, a couple last questions. So, what surprised you the most about using Leanpub so far? About your experience with it?
What I'm really happy about is the way you guys support things. So I'm happy surprised. I was kind of expecting it, but it's really nice to see that you guys are really doing it the right way. So that's a happy surprise. I like to work with smart people. I like to work with so that you seem to have all of that, and you seem, which is most important for me, to have the real agile mindset for the focusing. So I like that. Um, the negative surprise is what you just said. PayPal. I don't like PayPal at all.
Yeah.
I think I've said it before. I understand your problem with payments. That's exactly what we're at this moment trying to solve with Prague Author as well. We will go for an official sales with lots of chat, but that's not easy. So we're right there in the middle with doing all that kind of stuff. But I understand the problems that you have with that. I personally don't want to go with PayPal for my own startup because I heard so many companies having trouble that PayPal at one point decides, well, we'll block all your money, and so that's not a road I want to go to. But that's just a choice, right?
Right.
But I've seen, people not wanting to go pay for the book, and that was actually another reason to put it 0 in the beginning, which I already forgot. Is that, well, then anybody can pay. They can just download the book and find another way. So that's possible as well if it's at 0. Otherwise, it's not.
We've had like thousands of people, download, like, buy books and get free books, and we've had like probably about 5 or 10 like sort of indignant, I'm not going to use PayPal because they're bad types of feedback, which means there's probably like about 5-10 times that who think that way. But that's still like it's a small percentage. It's probably like 1% or 2%. But we do it in a second. If it was as easy as using Stripe, like as soon, like I think that probably the day after Stripe is available in Canada, we'll probably be trying to integrate it. But it's a sort of a hard, annoying problem, and we have so many other problems that we just have to prioritize, right?
Right, and I think it's correct, because maybe by the time that the other problems are solved, maybe other services are available in Canada, and then it's not a problem. So although I don't like that it's only PayPal, I do understand that this is your priority.
Yeah, we want to make Leanpub as good as possible for authors. I mean, right now you can't even put parts in a book, which is something I'm going to be coding next. So, well, anyway, thanks. This has been really nice, Yves. So, thank you very much for talking with me. And I'm going to post this this week, I think, on Leanpub, and also look at adapting this into the Lean publishing book I'm writing. And if I do that, I'll ping you like beforehand and show you what the section looks like, and see if you're fine with that, or if you have any feedback or comments, etc. Excellent.
Cool.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for being a Leanpub author.